super guest, very important guest with us today. In fact, all our guests are very important, but this one is super important. We have Mr. Jamie Angus, the director of BBC World Service. Welcome to the Morning Rush, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. I think we've heard you. We've heard your voice before in certain places. Yeah. Do you go live?
Sometimes I go live, but most of the time I'm behind the scenes, so I don't really do much broadcasting. So this is a rare. I don't broadcast much in the UK, but when I'm travelling, I like to come in and see stations that we work with and hear from you guys about what's on your mind. So it's really nice to be here.
Well, good to have you. Good to finally put a face to the voices that we hear, especially on the BBC minute program. Good information there, great stuff. Thanks for giving that to us and letting us spread the word. And speaking of word, the good news, of course, I mentioned it earlier this morning, the 12 boys and their coach who've been found alive in the cave after 9 days in Thailand. You guys are following the story pretty closely, right?
Absolutely, and I just think this is one of those stories that international audiences can't get enough of. It's a really attracting big audiences. People are so pleased that there's good news because there's, Lord knows there's enough bad news stories in the world. So everyone's really relieved there's been some good news from Thailand, and I was looking at our coverage on bbc.com/news this morning and just thinking how much audiences want to kind of find out more about how they might get the children out and how safe they are, and it's nice to have a story for a change which maybe got some good news in it, right?
And people are going there to find out more information, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about something that's been lurking and lingering for a while, Brexit. Today, apparently, I don't know if I've actually done it yet, maybe later on today there's going to be a speech from the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, about it, like a third option. Are you tired of the story? Because I mean, as a BBC guy, you might be like, enough already, you know, let's put this to bed.
We're interested in it, and it's a story we have to cover very differently for our domestic audience in the UK, and then for the international audience who have a different set of interests around Brexit. So I think here in Nigeria, you know, maybe audiences and businesses are very interested in it. After Britain leaves the EU, will there be more trade with a Commonwealth country and a country like Nigeria where we have huge historic ties and a lot of family ties between UK Nigerians and here in Nigeria. So I think there's a lot of interest in that, and people want to know, people can't wait to know from BBC News what's the trade arrangement going to be like, what's the deal going to be like. But the problem is that we just can't answer that question right now because there's a negotiation going on, and she even has to negotiate, the Prime Minister Theresa May has to negotiate with her own government, who are themselves kind of divided internally on this, as to what kind of arrangement they get with the EU, what kind of deal they get. And we may not know that until the autumn, so it could go on for some time.
All right. You think the trade balance between our two countries is fair? I mean, because right now it's a bit lopsided, really. You know, there seems to be more coming our way than going your way, as it were.
It depends what kind of things we're talking about. I mean, I think probably for sort of services, services rather than goods, there's probably more services coming out of the UK and into Nigeria, but we could see that changing because, you know, Nigeria, one of the things we're talking about this week with our global debate about Africa's young generation, a force for change, is, you know, Nigeria's coming knowledge economy, how young people will develop these abilities through their better education to deliver skills and services back into countries like the UK. So they might become, you know, web developers, or they might become financial services people, or, you know, these are kind of growing areas of the Nigerian economy where the next generation of Nigerians could change the balance of payments around, could change the sort of economic profile of the country so that it's more knowledge and services based as well as, you know, goods and manufacturing.
All right, there seems to be some sort of belief that international news services don't like to promote the positive aspects of Africa. So as a powerhouse, the BBC World Service, you've been in it for almost a century now, you know, or more than a century now. So it's like, how do you take that information, people telling you that when it's about corruption, famine, pestilence and greed and whatnot and war, that it is blown up quickly, you know, you have their 24-hour coverage of it going on, but when it's but you guys don't focus or give attention to the good things, the good positive things that are coming out of Africa.
We've heard that criticism for over many years from African audiences, and we listen to it, and we're responding to it. So I think one of the things we're talking about this year, obviously expanding our services into Pidgin, Yoruba and Igbo, but also more African TV for Nigeria that we're making this year around sport, around business, around lifestyle. programming because we want to widen the range of editorial stories that we cover and tell some more of Africa's positive stories told by African journalists employed locally here by the BBC. So, we've employed 200 new journalists, opened a new bureau here in Lagos because we believe that Nigerian journalists are the right people for us to work with, to work for the BBC, to tell Nigeria's stories back to the world, not just about reporting Nigeria for itself, but reflecting great stories from Nigeria back to the outside world.
Okay, well, that's in motion, that's in progress right now.
Yes, so those services are now up and running, so you can now get digital news in Igbo, Yoruba and Pidgin from the BBC. You've got the Pidgin Radio Minute, which runs on your sister station here, as well as the BBC Minute in English. So we want to reach out to new audiences, younger audiences, who do feel very keenly that they want international broadcasters to show more sensitivity to positive news from Africa.
All right, so speaking of news, that leads me on to fake news. With the advent of the rise of Donald Trump, and hopefully the fall soon, but that's my personal opinion anyway. How do you cope as a very important platform that maybe something that you might put out might not be accurate? How do you cross-check your information? Because I know the temptation is to bring it out quickly nowadays, because everybody wants that instant calm and that information. So do you hold back a little bit before you research and verify the story? What is it? How can people recognize and stop fake news in coming through their platforms?
We've always felt it's more important to be right than to be first. That's always been a thing that people trust the BBC for. So we understand that audiences think the BBC is the most trusted international news brand, but it's not enough to just rely on that. We have to kind of earn the respect of audiences, and we have to show around something like fake news, which I've said is a priority for World Service Group this year. We have to show that the World Service is at the forefront of thinking about fake news. How do we tackle it? How do we call out particular egregious examples, dangerous, damaging examples? Maybe like in the run-up to the Nigerian elections next year, that'll be a particular priority for us. A moment where I think people will expect the BBC to play quite a role in being a real voice of authority as to saying which claims are true and which claims are false in a really hotly fought election, like the one you're going to have.
Okay, but but won't you be accused of taking sides? Is that how are you going to maintain that?
Well, we're used to being in the centre of arguments about fairness. That's what the BBC is used to. It's something that we have in the UK. Our commitment to impartiality, to being fair to all sides and examining the truth behind claims. So, we have a service called BBC Reality Check online in English, where we actually examine the facts behind disputed claims. Because more and more we think audiences want us to call out verifiable facts behind a story. They don't want broadcasters to just say, oh, on the one hand, the one side says this, and on the other side says that, and who's to know? Time will tell who's right. That's not enough. People want an organisation like the BBC to say, if there's a particularly hotly disputed story, to say, do you know what? Actually, the facts are this, and then you go and make up your own minds what you feel.
So how come no one called out Boris Johnson when he said that they were going to save £350 million a day if they left, and that money was going to be, if they left the European Union, £350 million a day will be saved, and that will be given to the National Health Service.
Well, because we don't know whether that's going to happen or not yet. Because
it's been how many years now? It's been 2 years now.
So, but my answer to that is that actually during the Europe referendum in Britain, this was the particular task for the BBC, and audiences asked us to fact check the claims made by both sides. So we said not only that we had a problem with the £350 million figure, you can see that on the BBC Reality Check site, but we also disputed some of the claims made by the other side, who said, for example, that average household incomes are going to fall by £1,000 a year. We said actually we didn't like that either. We thought it was a difficult, troublesome figure, and we explained why. So I think absolutely the BBC has got to be prepared to call out the facts behind a story. That's what audiences are telling us, and that's what we want to do.
All right, nice one. So what's your take on Nigeria? Are you seeing? Are we making any sort of progress? I mean, you've been here in and out over the years.
I think there's an incredibly positive story for Nigeria's future, particularly when you're talking about young audiences and your young, up and coming kind of entrepreneur political class. So whenever we meet, the Nigerian entrepreneurs or our young journalists who we're employing here, or the young audiences who are going to be attending the global debate that we're recording with Zainab Badawi, you get a huge sense of Nigeria's potential future growth. how Nigeria captures that and makes sure that everything runs smoothly is kind of a problem for you guys to agree between yourselves. That's your country, your democracy, and your decision. I think what we feel is that part of how countries become stable, become more stable, have stable democracies, is access to independent and verifiable news, both national and international. So in as much as the BBC's got a role to play in this, we just think our presence in the market, working in partnership with you guys and others, providing access in your own languages to international news that it can really be trusted. We think that's a really important job for us.
All right, nice one. Well, I want to say, Jamie, thanks for coming through. You're here for a few days. Have you sampled any of the local delicacies?
Yeah, so I've been, I've had some jollof. That was very important because the Ghanaians said their jollof was better.
You know the truth.
You know that's not true.
Yeah,
right, okay.
Yeah.
So we had Nigerian jollof, and also I particularly like the plantain. So we had some stew with the plantain, and it's funny because when you're in London you see the Nigerian shops, the supermarkets with all the yam and plantain outside, so it's great to be here and have some of the local food. Really
but some great Nigerian restaurants have sprung up in London.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Lots of Nigerian families there.
So you know authentically now. Can we put an advert on BBC World Service that Nigerian jollof is better than Ghanaian jollof?
I think we have to maintain BBC impartiality on this.
No, I don't think so. No need for that. We already know the answer. Let's make it 1 minute advert.
Okay, all right. I'll let you have that. Yeah.
All right, nice one. Also, what else you guys got planned lined up for while you're here?
I'd say we've got the global news debate. We're spending some time working with other broadcasters that we work with. Crucially, we're having a bit of a reception this evening. We'll also be showing the England game. So there's a very important football game this evening. So somehow I've got to do my work and also just keep half an eye on the football because it's a really big evening this evening. So we're sorry that you guys didn't make it out the group stage. And
it would have been good to have met England again down the line, But I hope you guys go far. It's been a lot of hard day. I think Nigerian England supporters are in the same position.
Yeah.
Because every World Cup, there's a lot of expectation, a lot of hope, and the hopes get raised a bit. Then at the last minute, it gets crushed. So I hope it doesn't happen to you.
I hope so too. Yeah. But I thought that a lot of those young Super Eagles teams are really, really talented, and I think there'll be another generation for them to come back, hopefully in 4 years' time.
If we can keep them together, and also, I mean, I was even looking at your news feed just earlier on this morning about what's going on with our own NFF. Yeah. So there seems to be a bit of trouble brewing down the line between the NFF and the government and FIFA. So we hope that we can be resolved.
So we're very interested. Football and sports coverage in Africa is hugely important to us, and we have the African Footballer of the Year, the BBC African Footballer of the Year competition. Victor Moses was one of the shortlisted. Didn't win. Mo Salah won this year, but maybe that's inevitable. But someone like Victor, a young Nigerian. British Nigerian footballer, someone who we're very fond of in the UK. So there's lots for the future, I think.
All right, nice one. All right, thanks a lot. Enjoy your time here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, and keep the good work going. And hopefully we'll see you come election time. All right, it's Jamie Angus, the director of BBC World Service, hanging out with us. It's a morning rush on the Beat 99.9 FM. Stick around. The midday show should be up next. Plenty of good music. I told you earlier on that Drake is going to dominate for the next few months. If you don't like Drake, you need to move to another planet because, sorry, that's just the way it is. His album Scorpion is just too huge, so there's no way to avoid it. He's going to be occupying loads of spaces in different slots in different countries. We're going to play that later on for you. Stick around, but we've got brand new music from Tyson Noah. This one is called Jeje. It's a good morning to you, Lagos. Rise and shine. If you're not up yet, enjoy.